Okay, I'd like to thank you all for joining us today with the Film Roundtable. My name is Matthew Wolf, and I'm thrilled to introduce Phedon Papamichael.
Hi.
Jeff Cronenweth.
Hello.
And Erik Messerschmidt.
Hello.
And they're all joining us for today's roundtable. Before we get into the meat of the roundtable and we get started on the conversation, I just want to lead us through a moment of silence to honor all the 1,610,468 reported worldwide COVID deaths as of today. And that's 296,000 in the US alone. We'd also like to honor all of our Black and brown brothers and sisters, as well as our First Nations brothers and sisters whose lives have been taken by the hands of police brutality and other senseless acts of violence. So if we can all take a moment of silence, that'd be great. Okay, thank you, everyone. We've been holding these moments of silence since our first roundtable and feel that it's important to hold this awareness as we find ourselves back on set and back at work. And obviously we're still in the midst of a pandemic, even as we might see a way out with vaccines finally, but as we return to work, and we must do so with an awareness of safety and empathy towards each other. So now I'd like to introduce our guests. As I've said, we have Phedon Papamichael, Jeff Cronenweth, and Erik Messerschmidt. You guys all in LA, is that right?
Yeah.
Two of us are. I am.
I'm in Savannah, Georgia.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Savannah, Georgia. Okay, I'm sure there's a story there you can share with us. Looks like a hotel room. So
yeah, I'm in like a classic Southern American home. I'm renting a house here. I'm on a movie and prepping a movie here. So yeah,
very cool.
Yeah.
Very cool. Well, I want to welcome you all to the Film Roundtable and thank it's not been easy to schedule this, and thank you all for taking the time to share some of your experiences with us. I wanted to lead off with a question that that brought you all together, even though you may not know what that question is. As I feel like as cinematographers, I'm a cinematographer. I feel like our love for the art and science of cinematography drives us all to make great and memorable cinema, and more importantly, like we appreciate other people's great memorable visual cinematography. Whereas sometimes some creatives might like to keep their skills and their experience to themselves. I think us as cinematographers, one of the things that I love about cinematographers is that I feel like we're in a boys' club and that we're great at sharing with each other. Oftentimes, I'll find myself looking at something, watching a shot, and wondering how something was done, and wanting to pick up the phone to the DP of that movie. And I want to share a quick story before I lead into the question, as to really a classic, amazing example of how this happened to me. Very early on in my career. I just come out of film school in London, and I was shooting a music video. It was 16 mil. And the director said to me, there's a driving scene or on a low loader. He goes, I want this scene to look like Heat, where they're coming out of the tunnel in Los Angeles. I was like, no problem. I thought, how the hell am I going to do that? So I tracked down Dante Spinotti's agent in LA, and I call up and I say, hi, my name's Matthew Wolf. I'm a recent film school graduate, and I'm trying to emulate Heat, and I want to ask Dante Spinotti some questions. And they're like, sure, man, give us your number. We'll get back to you. Thinking that was the end of it. And about 2 weeks later, the phone rings one afternoon, and this voice on the other end of the phone says, hi, can I speak to Matthew Wolf? And I said, sure, who is it? And he said, it's Dante Spinotti. And I was dumbfounded. I actually didn't know what to say. I was like, for a moment, I was like, lost for words. So I was like, hi, nice to meet you. And he goes, so I understand that you wanted to ask me some questions. It turned out he was in Canada on a down day shooting Wonder Boys. And he was in his hotel room. He said, yeah, he said, shoot away, ask me anything you like. We spoke for about 20 minutes or so, and we were shooting the shit, and I was asking him some questions, and he answered everything. And it was incredible. It was a real pivotal moment for me, and just, was a first example of how giving that we are as cinematographers. And you guys, I mean, with so much experience that you all have, and I know some of you have worked together before, but I just wanted to hear each of your own experiences to see, whether that happened for you, whether you guys have pulled on each other or something along those lines. So let's start with you, Phedon, if that's cool.
Sure. I mean, I'm very fortunate to have a lot of friends that we actually, I know we, of course, never on the same set, but I've worked with, in various capacities with a lot of my DP friends. Actually, Messerschmidt, we've worked before together, and Janusz at some point gaffed for me and Mauro Fiore. So we're all very close friends. We have a long relationship. So we're very intertwined and constantly exchanging information and giving advice about crew. We all travel a lot. Like I'm about to go to London and do a show, so I call the people, ask, about crew members, recommendations, everything, it's not just technical, and it's life advice, how to balance this whole crazy lifestyle we're in. And we're constantly talking about this: travel, families, divorces, kids, schools, COVID, so it's definitely a brotherhood, and feel very close to a lot of these connections to all cinematographers and all crew members, and in terms of inspiration, I mean, everything I do and I have done is obviously inspired by some cinematographer at some point in my life. It's all an accumulation of images I took in as a child, and from the Westerns, the John Ford Westerns when I was a kid, and watching them Saturday night in Germany on television, and Storaro and Bertolucci and 1900, Conformist, Robbie Miller, Vendenders. I mean, everything is everything I do is somehow in some drawer in my head, and probably surfaces whenever I'm presented with some issue or something I'm doing, or some inspiration always comes from the accumulation of everything we've experienced and loved about cinematography, and why it's affected us so much, and what led us to pursue this profession.
Cool. Very cool.
Somebody has a lot of family activity in there.
I think it's Jeff. I think it's Jeff, because it keeps going back to your image. So there's a lot
I
of.
don't know. I don't hear it.
The only reason I think it's you, Jeff, is because while Phedon was talking, the lead image kept going to you.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if that's
Oh yeah. Let me take care of that.
It's a little birthday party going on.
This is the kind of thing we have to be prepared for on set. Those last minute unexpected surprises.
Yeah, it's always the sound department.
Sorry about that.
Yeah.
It's a sound department.
Shut up, baby.
Yeah, I know.
Quiet.
Basically. I was going to add to what Phedon said is it's a craftsman ladder that we climb, internship, if you will. And we all work in different capacities. I mean, some people take different routes to become a cinematographer. Obviously, there's no formula, but a lot of us make friendships on the way up and become crew members together and work for each other. And like Phedon said, Erik and I have worked together as well. And so that becomes a support network where we can share and talk about new technologies or things that we saw, or how did something get accomplished, or what would you do in this situation? But it's a funny situation because once you become a cinematographer, you're very, very rarely on somebody else's set. And so then you're kind of on an island on your own deciphering this. You hear things from your crew members that have worked on other sets, and you get curious that way. And you may, depending on the relationships and friendships, sure, but it's an odd thing why it's not more accessible. I think we all just get self-conscious when someone else is there that does the same thing that we do. But it's this kind of underlying kind of rule that you just don't do it very often. And so it's funny, but within that statement, I don't know anybody that wouldn't want to share now. And I've always been super open to anything, and I don't think it's that hard. I think it's just what we personally bring to things that make us individuals, and our cinematography. It's the technicality of it is pretty straightforward, But as a camera assistant, when I first started out, I would work and I always found this with people that weren't confident in themselves. They had tricks. And they had filter cases, and they had filters that had no labels on them, but they might be names of somebody. And that was their, and as a camera assistant, you would like take out the Barney filter and have no idea what it is. Although you could go to the rental house and like cut them up and go, oh, that's a low cost two or something, if you wanted to figure it out. But I don't know anybody that's actually been successful that kept secrets. And all through my career as an assistant and an operator, I worked with my father, and I worked with Conrad Hall, and I worked with all these people, and all of them were enormously generous, all invested into the craft, and would go out of the way to contribute to anybody's jobs or tasks that they're trying to, and also listen to anybody, because you might miss something on the set, and if you're not open-minded to other people's input, you're gonna miss out on some unique opportunities that come up and surprises that may have slipped by when you're kind of overwhelmed with everything else that you're managing on a set.
It was funny. It's funny you bring it up, because I was just talking to Derek Wolski about this. We were like talking about the dangers of or the necessity to be aware of your own tricks, like when your crutches, like the things you lean on when you don't know how to solve a problem, being like, oh well, I'll just do that again because that worked last time, and being aware of it enough to not always do that. So you force yourself to make a different choice and explore something else, or ask somebody a question. And like, I think that's so true. And I do think cinematographers are super generous about how they approach stuff. And because nobody asks except for DPs maybe, but like, how did you do that? Or what did you do here? Or how did you expose it? Or whatever, people are always, I think, DPs are super generous with that, for sure. It's like it's a special thing. It's kind of one of the joys of this job, I think.
For sure. I mean, it's like, I mean, you Jeff, you mentioned something before about talking to your crew and listening to your crew. I mean, I feel like that I don't know about you guys, but I think there's a time when you start off in your career and you're used to shooting a certain size of projects, and then the more accomplished you get, the bigger opportunities you get, and then the bigger sets you're on. And often times you'll come across something that you're not sure about, and you've not done before. And while those challenges are exciting, I feel like it's important to surround yourself with good crew who can kind of support you, as well as, obviously doing your own research. I'm wondering if there's a time in your careers where you've kind of come across something that you didn't know how to deal with, and how you solved that problem. Erik, maybe start with you.
Yeah, I mean, every day. I mean, all the time. I mean, I always feel like I don't know what to do. I mean, I feel like I have a plan generally, but I guess I think maybe I'm always like suspicious of when I'm confident, like that if I'm confident, then maybe that's the wrong choice. Like I'm taking the easy way out. It's like, oh, I'll do that. Like that's like, if it's the easy thing, then it's probably mediocre. So like, maybe I should be suspicious of that a little bit, but yeah, I mean, all the time. I mean, there's lots of, I can think of countless situations, for sure, of like, oh, I don't know what to do here. Or then definitely like in prep, I mean, there are lots of times where you're trying to figure something out and you call somebody. I mean, I've called Jeff 100 times, like, hey, what do you think I should do here? So it's like, I don't know. I think it's super common, at least for me.
But that's a classic example right there. I mean, you know, you and what I was talking about before, you know, you're stuck with what to do, and you know, you can call on Jeff or somebody else. And like, and what would you do? You know, it's like, what would you do in this situation? And you know, I don't know. You know, Phedon, you know, now you're directing more. You know, if there's something you're not sure about in terms of directing, would you call up another director? I mean, I don't know what it's like to say, you know, how would you approach this scene? I don't know whether that same camaraderie is there for directors as it is for cinematographers.
Actually, I would say no. I just know that for some reason they are very competitive and possessive amongst each other. Like Alexander Payne told me, I feel like we're married and you get to go cheat all the time. And it's funny because, you know, it's true. I mean, we get to, you know, work with, which is great. I mean, you know, some of us get to work with a wide variety of directors, and I definitely enjoy that. I mean, you know, I love my repeat relationships. I mean, I've done 5 movies with Mangold and 5 movies with Alexander Payne, and you know, that's always nice, and to go back and, you know, we've grown together. Same with my crew. I mean, with Rafi, my gaffer, I've done probably 30 features, and you know, it's just always nice to have that comfort level. And you know, and then he goes and works with Wolski, and Ray Garcia works with Chivo, and then they come out with Deacons, and then they come back, and then it's like, what would Roger, you know, in this situation, like, what would Roger do here? You know, if I'm stuck with something, what would Wolski do? And so that's nice. But the directors, yeah, I mean, you know, as I'm directing, and you know, often I kind of feel like, well, you know, I'm doing a lot of their work, and I'm doing a lot of this thing, but I do start to very strongly sympathize with directors when I see them, you know. Whereas when it actually happened, I was probably like, I don't know, you know, like. But you know, I do recall the directors I work with, and I'm very much influenced. But I mean, I don't call them, but I mean, I recall certain instances where they were presented with a similar thing, or I think of a way they would have solved the problem a certain way, and then you know, I definitely apply that. You know, like with Alexander, I mean, I always go, you know, he always goes, well, you know, let's just tell the story of a car pulling up in front of a house. So we'll just put the camera on sticks here and pan the car in. And you know, while I'm doing it and I'm the cinematographer, I go, well, I mean, there certainly is probably a more exciting way to do this. But then I found myself directing, and I was in a similar, and I'm like, told my DP, like, let's just pan the car in. I mean, this, you know, it's like that's all this shot needs to tell. And you know, so I definitely am influenced and learn from you know, things when, you know, when I'm directing, because you are suddenly really responsible for it, and you go, this is really all it needs. I don't need to also lay track and meet the car, because it doesn't really add anything. So, and those are influences and inspirations I've had from the you know, the collaborations with the directors I admire, of course. So but I could call them, I guess, you know. But yeah, they're funny. Directors are a bit different, I think. Because you know, they're auteurs and they write, and they, you know, they yeah. So, but I mean, and you know, I think they like us to you know, stay DPs, because they like working with us.
Exactly. Once a marriage is made, nobody wants to.
Well, it's just like us. We like our great first AC, of
course,
you know, and our gaffer. But you know, I've had gaffer shoot for me, and I mean, whenever I have to hire DP, I typically resource to my crew members, you know, whether it's, you know, an operator, or I mean, somebody, you know, as a filmmaker. And I want all my crew members to be filmmakers, you know, in terms of you know, I mean, people ask me, whether you prefer directing or shooting? I go, I don't really think of myself like, you know, I grew up loving movies. I want to make movies. I ended up, you know, somehow my career took me, you know, where I got hired more as a cinematographer. But I mean, I'm just, you know, a storyteller. I want to tell movies. You know, sometimes it's more focused on the camera work and lighting. Other times it's includes, you know, writing and working with actors more. But we're all collaborating and telling a story and contributing, what we love about it in whatever way we can. And I want every crew member to feel the same way. I mean, I want every grip to have read the script. I want them, to like the script. I don't want them to work on a movie they don't like, whether it's the prop guy, the set dresser, I mean, because, and I ask people all the time. I ask my camera PAs, what do you think of this composition, or should I have them all the time at the monitor. I always say, come stand, don't stand over there. Why are you facing the tent wall? Well, I don't want to get him. No, stay. Look at the monitor. I mean, and I can always say, no, I don't. That's not a good idea. But like, I definitely welcome everybody to, and I'll ask everybody because it's so subjective, and everybody has a different point of view, and I think it's really refreshing and helps me sometimes confirm something that I thought, or and it's or reassure me that it's great, and especially with gaffers and key grips and dolly grips. I mean, I really value everybody's opinion.
That brings up a good point. One of the things that we talk about a lot in Film Roundtable is how important the collaborative experience is, in filmmaking, and how it's really is a team effort from so many different levels. From, like you said, from the PA all the way up to the director, the producer. If you don't have a good team, then you don't have a good result, I don't think. And that can be on every level. And it's great to hear you kind of exemplify that in what you've just said. Jeff, I'm interested to kind of hear from you in terms of partly going back to my previous question about how you've dealt with things in your career where you've perhaps you've been stuck or stumped. Obviously you had an upbringing, growing up around filmmaking and cinematography from a very young age. So maybe it was instilled in you, but yeah.
Hardly. No, it's funny. Of course, I was very fortunate to work alongside my father, who, in many people's opinions is one of the greats, and certainly in mine. And the thing that happens to me more often than not is when I find myself in a corner and don't have a solution, I think back about what he would have done, or what we did during certain setups, and it's always comes back to, I was a young camera assistant, and I spent more time chasing people on the set, girls. And I go, I wish I had just watched a little more. That doesn't matter now. And what did he do? How did he get through that doorway? How did the door open and not be so bright? Or how did those silver elevator doors close and I can't see every source in the room? And it comes back, but certainly I have some regret about that, But you said an interesting thing earlier, though, about going through, Phedon did, about going through everybody on a set and eliciting ideas and looking at the integrity. And something that happens and why we all stay close is because you try to surround yourself with the most talented and invested people with the most integrity. And when you do get that team together, it's not that long. If truly you're utilizing them, and if they make that many contributions, then they're going to be on their own soon enough. And that's what happens. And that's why we all stay friends. And that's why it's this really collaborative community, because we do go to war on every one of these pictures, and we do get beat up and come out the other side. And then it's a beautiful thing when you get to go watch somebody else do it better, in some cases. And I was going to say one thing about directors. This is oddly unique, maybe not completely unique, but oddly unique to Fincher, who Erik and I work with. Every movie I've shot, the directors tell me about way before they lock the cut, that they sit with Fincher and show him the movie. So I'll say this, that he's just a guy that loves the craft so much, that is completely admired by a lot of filmmakers and filmmakers, and loves the industry and loves films and loves helping people. He's very generous that way. So and then when you talk to David, you hear about countless stories of going to bat for other directors, fighting studios over this, or studios asking how this should resolve or how to fix it. And so he's a very involved and a sought after guy. And so that's the only, like, I've never seen it with any other director. Like, I've never seen people approached that way and what. And then lastly, I've never directed anything long form like Phedon, but I have directed about 400 commercials and another couple hundred music videos. And the thing that it does, I mean, initially when I started doing it, I did have a few people that were caught off guard or intimidated by the fact that you also can or called yourself a director. But most of the time, and honestly, for me, it just made me a better cinematographer. It just made me understand both sides of it a lot more. And in some ways, you know, we can be selfishly tedious at the expense of a performance or something. And so it helps me weigh out those choices better. And I feel like I'm a much better partner and collaborator, which is the reason it's my favorite part of this. And we've all worked with different type of directors. I've worked with directors where they purely want to work with the actor. The blocking is all left to you. How ultimately it's going to be cut together is all on your shoulders. I've worked, which is liberating and super fun to have all those choices. And then I've worked with people, and Erik can attest to this, that Fincher's pretty regimented. He has a really good idea. You really have to have something better and a full idea and all the coverage if you're going to not go with the plan that you all agreed to before. So to me, it's the collaboration that's the most fun, and it's the people that you actually do interact with and come up with these and solve those problems, you know, in a way I'm circling back together, because sometimes you can get boxed in by simply an actor wanting to do something, and all it takes is a director to go, look, why don't we just do this here? Or what if we do this over here? And then that frees up the rest of the coverage. It frees up your approach to how you're going to light it. There's so many ways of solving problems, especially if you're in a group and you're all fighting for the same thing. And it's not anybody's egos rising above like the general benefit of that scene.
I have a kind of like a tongue-in-cheek joke that I tell the crew and actually the directors that I've been working with, like I say, look, the set has to be a safe space, you know, like it has to be a safe space for ideas. Like we have to, let's get rid of ego, and let's try and promote an environment where we can try and improve the shot, you know, and you encourage people to do that. And if you encourage them to do that, not from like their place of like, I want it to be my idea, but let me look at it objectively, like, how can I improve the shot? And if you, I really feel like if you're open to it, like if you're in our position, you're a cinematographer or a director, sometimes time is never on your side, you know? So you like have to make those decisions. And it's very clear, like, this is my decision to make, but it doesn't mean that you can't create an environment where people can say, I think I can improve this, and I see what you're struggling with, or what if we did that, and at least take a moment to listen, you know? And there have been so many situations for me where you listen to that and you're like, man, that's a really good idea. Okay, yeah, we can look at it that way, you know? And it's like, where you're trying to, even if you're trying to solve some sort of silly, you know, practical problem, like how do I hang that light there, and you have an idea about how to do it, and you know, someone comes to another, you know, and they look at it from a different perspective and they solve the problem. It's an amazing thing about the film set, you know, and it's kind of what keeps me going back, because a movie set's a pretty frustrating place to be otherwise, you know.
No, but it's so true. I mean, and that's why it's really important that every crew member feels like they're part of this group and part of this, you know, machine. And that's why, and it comes from the director, of course. I mean, it can come from us also, but it's nice if it comes all the way from the top. And like Alexander Payne knows every driver's name on day one, and every van he gets into, every grips, he knows they have a kid in college. Like, it's just, and I go, how do you do that? And that's just, you know, pay a little attention, and he has amazing memory. But it makes everybody on the set feel so much part of the family. And you know, we have movie nights and pre-production where every Thursday, you know, we invite all the PAs over, and we cook a pasta and make a pizza, and we just watch a movie, or they get to show one of their shorts that they did in film school, and you know, we all talk about it. And then when the film starts, it's so great. And like you said, I mean, little help can come from anyone. I mean, this film I was just doing in Greece, and I was struggling sometimes with, like you said, like the silliest thing, like the tape that was holding up this light bulb kept, and and then at some point, the boom guy, who was a veteran, I mean, he's been around, he was very quiet. So this is like a weekend. He goes, "Do you mind if I say something?" And he goes, "Of course." And he goes, "Well, why don't you do this and this and that?" And I go, "That's brilliant." Like, and then I realized this is a guy who's always thinking, and now he kind of felt, and I encouraged him to, please, I mean, because he's been around, he's done, he's boomed like for 30 years. It doesn't matter what films, but like, I mean, he's just, and then, it was just great how much feedback you got, and everybody felt like, oh, we don't have to be quiet, and we, let him think, and, he saw me struggling with something, but like, well, and it's like perfect, like, yeah, let's do that, and it's the boom guy. It's not, I mean, so it's great to have that involvement, and everybody feel like we're all contributing. We're all of the equal importance. Like, I can't do my job if I'm out of water, or if I mean, so every element is of equal importance. I mean, as sure as the key creative. I mean, there's the editor, the production designer, the DP, the director, but we don't function on, we can't function, we can't perform what we do without the support of our people. So it's equally important to every contribution that's made. Can you guys hear him?
No.
No, you're muted, Matt.
I'm muted because my 4-year-old was screaming, crying so loudly outside the door. I wanted to save you guys from that. Like I always try to create on my set the similar kind of environment where I encourage people to come up with ideas. And if there's a good idea from someone, like a grip or electrician or whoever, and it's a good idea, I'll present it, and if the director likes it, I'll say, well, that was his or her idea. Like, I want to give credit where credit's due. I don't want to take the credit for somebody else's idea. And then if it's a bad idea, if I come up with an idea, it's a bad idea, I'll say it was their idea too. Basically, I always try and have a sense of humor on set. But no, I think it's for sure. I mean, like you've all said, if we can create an environment where people are invested, it's better for everyone, and better for the project as a whole. I'd love to talk about.
I'm sorry, I was just going to say real quick, that when I started in the business, they used to say, if you're having a good time on set, it usually ends up being a bad movie, or I don't know. Jeff, you remember? I don't know. There were all these people. There were these, and I must just say, I mean, I had great time, and the movie turned out great. I had terrible time. The movie turned out great. I had bad time. The movie turned out bad. I mean, that definitely is not true about anything. They also used to say, like, if you laugh on set in a comedy, then it's not going to be funny in the movie, and all these things, but it's not true. I think if you have a good time, and like you said, Erik, you create a safe space, where people feel, they want to come to work. And, the mood changes on the set so quickly. Like, you go from, joking around, talking about, sports, and then suddenly, it shifts really quick. So as long as people, are aware of it now, it's like suddenly, okay, we got 20 minutes to do this, and then, and then they can adjust to that. And of course, as it's creative tension and creative energy, and I mean, people say, are you stressed and stuff? I'm like, no, yeah, I mean, not really. I mean, it's creative stress. To me, it's very different, like, it's like, I mean, I like sort of maintaining a certain energy and a certain pace. And, I feel like, actors work better that way. I mean, I hate when things sort of stall out and stuff. So, but I mean, as long as people know he's like this because of that right now. And then, it doesn't mean, that, we're not doing something great, anyway, but what I'm
saying. It's all about creating having the right atmosphere for sure on set, and being like, it's like filmmaking is such a family experience if it's the right experience, I think. And I think we've all been on sets that we don't want to be on, but hopefully they're not the sets that we're DPs on, I guess. I'd love to talk about some individual projects that you guys have shot, in your careers, and but before I get there, I just want to ask. I'm interested. I'm sure you guys have spoken about it, but what it's like being back on set during COVID times. Obviously, Phedon, I know you've been shooting in Europe. I don't know how different it is to shooting in the States. I don't know, Erik and Jeff, if you've been traveling outside of the States for your projects. I was chatting with a friend, which I think, Yo Willems, one of you worked on Hard Candy. Who's that? Was that you, Erik, or Jeff?
I did, yeah.
You worked on Hard Candy. Is that, Yo and I went to film school together. He was the year above me, and in London. But it's like being back on set now. As great as it is to be back working again, there's an element of some of the fun's been taken away because we're so strict and be so conscious about being safe and having certain things restricted and certain things slower. And I think it's tougher on some of the crew because especially some of the crew, like the grips and the electricians who are kind of lifting stuff and wearing masks. And there's definitely a sense of, at least in the commercial world for me, expectations haven't changed that much, but in terms of what people are expecting, but the job is harder for people. I'm just interested to know, what all your experiences have been, since you've been back. Jeff, let's start with you.
Well, I've been fortunate and I've stayed fairly busy, and I've had a chance to work in California, but also in other states here in America, and then abroad as well. And I didn't find it really that different. Everyone's taking the same protocols, temperatures and mask and distancing and all the things that we're doing here. It does slow things down. It seems to be a lot less impersonal because you can't read people's faces. You can't see expressions, good or bad. You don't see the joy in something that was so remarkably accomplished or something that didn't work. And it's really hard to tell. And so that kind of, it takes away from the interaction. And then just the social part of being on a set, because it is a community and you are together for a long time every day, and usually in hard situations, whether it's nighttime or cold or overly hot or any of those situations. And it's all gone now, that part of it. So it does take out some of the fun, if you will, or joy. And it just adds a few hours, but otherwise I still think you're there to do the same things. And my experiences with agencies, they stack the deck as they always can, but they're also more aware of what that is. And I uniquely, or not probably unique at all, I've had several unique for me where I've been on set shooting and the director somewhere else and the agency somewhere else. And I ended up shooting a spot for James Gray. And we had one day in Los Angeles with Leonardo DiCaprio that he showed up for. And then I was in Lisbon for 6 days on my own to finish the spot. And I actually, going into the job, I didn't know that was happening. So I was like, okay, that's okay. Sure. I want to go to Lisbon. Why not? And I found I've had a couple where it's opposite, where a director's been in Europe and he's directed here on set. And it was easier for him to stay awake. But I felt so bad for James because right in the, it's hard enough to stay awake doing night shoots. Imagine being on your couch, looking at a computer with a bad connection, sitting at 4 a.m, trying to be while we're taking an hour to set up something. There's no way. And so that didn't work as well as other situations have worked. But all in all, it was all done and the spots came out great. So,
Awesome. What about you, Erik?
Well, I'm prepping a movie right now, and it's a pretty complex film. It has aerial unit and a second unit and visual effects, and it's quite complex in terms of execution. And our production office is a decommissioned elementary school, so that each one of us can have a classroom as an office. And so we can have these socially distanced meetings, and you can sort of, but it's very strange for me because I'm used to, I love the prep process more than I like adore prep. I would love to just prep, actually. I love it. Because it's like the process of dreaming. It's like you go to the set and that's where everything is crushed, you know, where all your ideas are destroyed. I'm kidding, but I like the kind of process of the film set where you, or the prep process where you kind of meander through the production office and you lean, you know, you kind of step into the production designer's door and you listen to a conversation, you ask a question sort of off the cuff, and then you walk over to the set decorator and you throw an idea out, and then you can kind of listen to what's happening with the first AD, and you can wander in and look at the schedule and see what's happening. And there's like this kind of puzzle that you start to put together, and that process of development. And then of course, like all the time with the director, where you know, like you sit on the couch in the director's office and you're throwing ideas out, and you're going out to dinner at night and talking about the movie, and you know, it's like all of that stuff, and not having as much access to that is a little bit difficult and challenging in a way. Like it does not quite as, like, I hate that word organic, but you don't have, like, the ideas don't develop and flow in the same way. You know, you have these very formal Zoom calls where everyone talks about what they want to do, and it's, you know, everything is recorded and notated, and you can't have these kind of quiet hallway conversations about ideas you want to explore. You know, it's like, it makes it a less safe space, I guess I should say, you know, in a way. It's like, there's a formalization that's happened in the prep process, which is, I think, can be, at least for my process, a little challenging.
And I know exactly what you're talking about, because in the early stages, when everything is still pretty open and yet to be decided, when you get to see, you know, suggested locations, they haven't even been picked yet, but you see the direction that they're headed in, and so that starts to make sense to you. And you see wardrobe samples or pulls that they put up on their office walls, and you start to go, oh, okay, I see how this character is going to look and what this means, and maybe I should do this, or this can work for this. And then you see the sets coming together, and you still get that, but it's in an informal way. You know, it's not the same thing, and you don't get the accents. And to your point, Erik, you don't get to like eavesdrop and hear kind of things that you wouldn't necessarily pick up on that could have a lot of meaning down the road.
Yeah,
I mean, walking down that hallway with all the, you know, mood boards and things from the art department. I mean, you know, you take that stroll down that hallway like at least once a day, and like you said, you know, pop your head into the art director and go, you know. But yeah, and then we're doing like these virtual live scouts right now, you know, all over the world, and it's also kind of scary because, you know, it's just not standing there with a group, and I mean, you know, you're kind of following and trying to take in as much information, but it's certainly a very different experience of scouting. Let's say something in India, when you know, one guy's in London, one guy's in LA, and then different time zones, and then it's just, you know, how you stand there and you know, discover things together, and it's inspirational because you know, you discover it as a group, and here you kind of have to, you know, break things down in your own head, in your own mind, and then make notes and then present it next time you get together on a Zoom call. And it just doesn't, like you said, it doesn't have that organic creative flow where things just, one thing comes out of a little comment that somebody said off hand, and you know, it's I mean, I'm prepping a commercial right now, and there's so much miscommunication. It seems like you know, it's just talking about very simple things that if we could all just stand there on set and decide how to do it, but you know, and the key grips going like, I don't know, we keep changing things, and like, you know, it's just, it's definitely a very staccato way of interacting, and a lot of people are getting very frustrated with that.
Another thing that you miss out on is you develop like relationships with people. You sit in these vans going from location to location, and it's not always about the movie, but you understand who they are, what makes them tick, what their insecurities are, and what they're going to contribute to this. And you build these bonds that you're going to lean on later when you're in the middle of a you know, you're 60 days out of 120, and now you don't have an opportunity to develop those relationships and to kind of slowly kind of form a marriage, because we've been denied that opportunity. And Zoom, as fantastic as it is, it's very straightforward and functional. It just does what it's supposed to do, and you don't get any of that banter and levity that sometimes comes for, when you can't solve something, and standing there all together and figuring out why this doesn't work, or what's the next choice, or why in the story did it come to this point, and that idea then evolves to something else, and you kind of miss some of that.
I didn't realize how much work I got done in the scout van until I did a self-drive director's scout. Like we've been, you scout and there's 15 rental cars and we go location to location. Then you get back to the production office, you have 200 emails and you're out of touch. And I had no idea like I didn't appreciate how valuable that time is actually. And yeah, like to your point, Jeff, just getting to know somebody, and even if you're sick of talking about the movie, you talk about their kids or what's going on at home or whatever. And that strengthens the whole process.
And balances the set later. There's a lot of management skills that you have to run a set, with different people's personalities and different drives, and ultimately to get your will up onto the screen, you need everyone's helps, and you do have to manage crews as much as you have to contribute artistically to the project. And the more you know, and the more you're in touch with everybody, then the easier it is to understand why things happen.
I think you also you need empathy for people. It's like the film set is hard, and you have to build the empathy. Like when people are struggling, or they have an off day, or there's trouble at home, or you have to be able to connect with them emotionally, so that you can understand what's going on with somebody, so that you can be empathetic to that situation. You're not just so laser focused. I mean, we're always laser focused, but I think having a little bit of depth with what's going on in the world and with people helps with that, obviously.
Definitely. On the flip side, I don't know. I just came back from a commercial on the road, and now I'm quarantining from my family. I'm in a small room. My wife pulled a mattress on the floor so I could kind of keep away from the kids and trying to function around the family and time everything in between. That's another knock-on effect that kind of weighs in on deciding on a job and on a commercial kind of thing. And another factor that COVID has brought to the table, because it's not just about our own experiences, it's about how we affect other people's lives, and by the decisions that we make in terms of what projects we take. But I just want to flip the conversation a little bit. I kind of got asked recently about setting the tone. What does it take to set the tone for a project, for a movie, and what process do you go through as a cinematographer? And I'm interested, to ask each of you individually about different projects, especially with so much different work going on. I mean, I'm gonna start with Erik. It's kind of a question for Erik and Phedon. Jeff, you have to forgive me. I'm not sure in terms of your projects whether you've shot any movies that are black and white, but obviously Nebraska, Phedon, you shot that and you chose, I think, to shoot that digitally, and Erik now with Mank, you've also chosen to shoot that digitally. It's interesting. I was looking, one of you chose the Red and one of you chosen Ari, and especially like recreating something that's filmic. I'm just intrigued to know what drove those choices. And then you come to something like, Jeff, your recent experience, the Stories from the Loop, you've gone and you shot that on film, and it's very heavily special, a lot of heavy special effects. So let's, maybe start with you, Erik, because, you're right there on the square.
Well, when David called me and he told me about the movie, I was a little naive actually. And I was like, oh, great, black and white. I get to do black and white. And and he sent this. Then he sent the script, and I read the script, and I had kind of predisposed ideas of what black and white was supposed to be, I think, and it was, you know, it's kind of informed by my childhood and what I identified as being sort of the look of a black and white film, and I was attracted to noir, you know. And I think it's like an easy direction. Cinematographers, everybody wants to shoot noir. I think, you know, it's seductive in a way. And then I read the script, and it's like, I'm not really sure it's a noir film, actually. Like, that's not really what the movie is. And, but it has references, and, you know, it's kind of complex. And I was really nervous about, I immediately was like, okay, I'm going to end up, I don't want to, I felt like black and white could easily become a parody of itself. Like it could really easily become this, like it could draw attention to itself. And if I was too stylized or too like expressive, that it would pull the audience out of the story. And I was really concerned about that. And so what I did is I got like 300 photographs and still frames and, you know, film grabs, and I just assembled this whole assembly of images without any context, and I sent them to Fincher, and I said, hey, I responded to all this after I read the script. What do you think? And, you know, Jeff knows, like, you do something like that with David, and he immediately writes back. He's like, I like this. I don't like this. This is interesting. Tell me more about that. I hate this. Let's never do this. You know, it's like, it's very, you get very reflexive response, which is fantastic. And then I wrote him back, and I was like, well, I think this is kind of interesting for this scene, and I like this, and I like the flair in this, but you know, so we were like, and that we kind of filtered the lookbook, so to speak, down in that way. And it was really a way for me to understand what he was interested in, like what spoke to him. And because I could see like the spectrum of black and white. You know, I didn't appreciate at the time how broad that spectrum was, actually. I mean, I had seen lots of movies, but I didn't really contextualize it in my head about like the difference between 30s glamour and 40s noir. And, you know, it's like, it's so broad. And I felt like, okay, well, maybe there's opportunity to sort of draw on a lot of different inspirations from throughout that entire spectrum, you know, within reason, when it came to time to make the movie, you know. And I mean, I think I called you, Phedon, too. We talked about Nebraska and about the DI, and like, you know, we talked as well. I mean, it's like, you know, you call people and research and like, I don't know what to do here, or what should we do, or this is interesting, or how did you do that, or whatever. But yeah, it was daunting in a way, and also, of course, like I felt a little bit like I was on hallowed ground, you know, with Greg Toland and Citizen Kane, and, you know, you're worried about how the movie would be received and what people would say, and knowing that, you know, people are going to have predetermined ideas of what it should be in their head or whatever, you know. And it's like, so I was, you know, obviously conscious of that, but and it, you know, it was like a huge learning experience for me too, because I shot the whole movie at an 11, and like I was not used to using that much light on the set. And it was really fun. And I kind of like, in a way, I loved it. Like I want to work with that much light more, because I could be so bold with the choices, and you know, you didn't have to worry about spill on the back wall, or like everything falls off differently. You can apply shape, and, you know, when you have that much light on the set, it was kind of cool. It was super new for me, you know, so it was fun.
Did you
but tempting. But
did you work off a black and white monitor? So you said a lot before you started in terms of contrast and.
Yeah, we did we shot with a monochrome camera. So and then I had done on Mindhunter, the second season of Mindhunter, we monitored in HDR. I had such a miserable time grading the first season in HDR that, like, I was like, we got to figure out another way, and we ended up, the way we did it the second season is we did HDR on set, which really helped big time. And so like I felt like the DI process was so much easier as a result, and like we felt really confident with the exposures, and I knew exactly where everything was, and I was like, I felt really really comfortable with the camera at that point. And so we did the same thing on Mank. We did HDR in black and white, which was awesome because I could really it could really push the camera. I knew exactly where everything was, and yeah, it was fun. It was like, but I didn't appreciate, actually, I don't know if you had the same experience. I didn't like talk about tricks. Like I didn't realize how much I relied on color separation for depth. Like I really, like you really don't like the simple things about composition are like, okay, just cool that light off in the background a little bit and we can warm the face. If you're struggling to like explain depth or you can't backlight somebody and you need to, like all of those things, it doesn't work in black and white, obviously. So it's like you have to create a different set of, and I guess I knew that conceptually, but I didn't appreciate it until I was in that situation and I had to really kind of figure it out.
I got really into lighting off the monitor in Nebraska, and I go, wow, I should always do this, even if I'm shooting a black and white, like just have my lighting monitor on set, like set to black and white, and I can always, and get the separation through lighting and not rely on color separation, and then just flick it over and see if it's too much. But yeah, it was I really enjoyed it. I really loved the process of working black and white.
Larry Shear told me that the first 2 weeks of Joker, Todd Phillips turned the color off, and they lit it with a black and white monitor. And he said he would sneak over and turn the color back on and check himself and then turn it back off. I thought that was really funny.
Well, it kind of takes us back to the days when we had the black and white Polaroids for exposure, and we would always look at them. Do my little book with the Polaroid and all the lighting notes and diagrams. So it was great. But yeah, like Nebraska was same. I mean, I read it, obviously not, again, initially excited. I mean, Alexander had told me about Nebraska like a decade prior to that. He goes, I got this little black and white movie. I mean, I kind of knew it's not going to be a noir thing. It's not going to be a stylized thing. And and I read it, and the inspirations came more from these road movies, Paper Moon, and Alice in the Cities, and so, and then we, people always ask, well, why did you guys shoot black and white? It goes like it never existed in our mind in color, and actually the studio, I mean, almost literally had pulled the plug on it when after they said, we support you and you can cast whoever you want, and we love Alexander Payne movies. This was Paramount after everything prior to that had been Fox Searchlight, and he goes, well, great, I'm very excited, and by the way, it's going to be black and white. And apparently, there's silence in the room, and then I think his agent got a call, and they literally pulled the plug out of the movie. And then it slowly came back because Descendants was in the theaters and making lots of money, and Clooney got nominated, and so it kind of came back. It never came back to the number we had. We had 17 million and 50 shoot days, so it slowly crept up. It came back at 3.5 million. And then it made its way back up to like 13, and like we had to cut 15 days. And I said to Alexander, I go, oh shit, I mean, maybe I should do some tests, and I show you some D sets. He goes, no, but we talked about it should be black and white. He was willing to totally walk away. It didn't exist as an option. And it just felt so appropriate to the story. It's about isolation and loneliness, and the landscapes. I mean, also it's these wide shots and these small figures and how they disconnected, and lack of communication, and sort of absurdity of these the society, and it just really felt 100% appropriate. But again, not like I didn't want to stylize it. I wanted to keep it simple and not overlight it, and we did a lot of things with natural light and all that. I mean, I did discover in terms of using color, but going back to my black and white photography days, so I would tell production designer, like, let's paint this garage door red, and then I can make it, light gray, dark gray, and, same with the wardrobe. I mean, I realized I can do a lot of things with color because my colorist, Skip Kimball, back then in Technicolor, he showed me, I think it was true, one of these 80s, 90s movies that had a lot of color, you know, and like there was, I forget what movie it was. Anyway, the half the face was blue and the other was warm, and he put it up and he showed me what he had done, you know, and he could flip the key, you know, and I go, oh wow, that really opens up a lot of things. So I would shoot lights up into the sky just for atmosphere, but like uncorrected HMIs, which created this blue glow. And you know, it's always hard, like if I had to do it in color, like later it's too much and I have to window it and dial it back out. But like it was really easy to grab that blue and light up like a sky behind a building, like it's a dawn shot, and just with the HM, because it was blue, or I could completely eliminate, you know. So it really, it was fun, you know, playing with all those tools and stuff. But yeah, I was, the whole time we were doing it, I was thinking, I wish we could do every movie in black and white from now
I know.
on.
It's definitely nice to see. It's definitely nice to see, like these days there seems to be a shift towards naturalism, and you go as small as you can with the lighting and available light, and you know, just watching Mank, you know, you're seeing, you know, lots of like hard directional keys, and you know, like, it was interesting. There was a couple of scenes where it felt like so much of it felt like original to the times, especially with the driving scenes. You know, with some of the keying that you used, to, you know, that felt so period, and even the audio felt so period. And then, you know, like you'd find yourself in I think there was a big scene in a room where people were sitting around, like all the famous people at the time were sitting around a living room, and it was really, really dark and moody. I felt like you couldn't really have got away with that on film, you know, unless like you're saying, I don't know if you shot that at an 11, but
I did. There's a lot of light in there. Yeah.
It looked great. I mean, just skipping back to you, Jeff, for a second. You know, like I don't know, you know, with Tales from the Loop, whether did you shoot the pilot? You know, I know you did episode one.
Yeah,
Right?
just the pilot. Yeah.
So how long, you know, how much were you able to set that look? And was it your decision to shoot on film, or was?
We didn't shoot on film.
Oh, you didn't? Oh, maybe
No, it was digital.
Oh, okay.
The only
I researched really well, didn't I? So
that's okay. The only unique thing we did was, and it's not unique, but the only thing we did out of the ordinary was we used 70 millimeter glass, trying to utilize a Montrose sensor, as much information as we can, and use depth of field as one of our storytelling tools, because our story was about a little girl lost in the world trying to find her mom, and the more that world could be intimidating and frightful to her, the better it was for our show. So those were some of the choices, and it took place up in a lot of exteriors, wide exteriors out in the snow, and so those things kind of just let us capture the landscape. But then the glass was so beautiful that you could shoot close-ups and still have this kind of enough texture, and you never lost perspective of where you are. You kept an actor in a room as opposed to turning into mush behind them, and that always, I think it's a wonderful way of telling stories, because it keeps everybody kind of grounded, and you know where you are, instead of, unless you're trying to mislead or confuse someone. So yeah, so
so beautiful. That show is so beautiful.
You're generous, thank you.
it was beautiful. I mean, I only saw your episode, to be honest with you. You know, you had a chance to watch as much TV as I'd like, but yeah, it was stunning. You know, so Phedon, you know, it's funny when I was checking out your films, and I remember I came across Phenomenon, and I remember when I saw Phenomenon, I thought that was one of the most amazing films, beautiful films, you know, and I think it still holds up to this day. I was watching some of it, you know, yesterday, and you know, I saw. I think hopefully I get this bit of research right. You you shot with the Panavision with C series lenses, I think. So, but I've shot with Panavision C series lenses. You know, they're not always very easy to get hold of. They're always in such high demand. But it just, you know, I think from there everything just felt so timeless, and it held up so well. And now with, like, I think you did the same with Ford versus Ferrari as well. And it's just, you know, I'm interested to kind of hear about the process, you know, when you've got such a long span of work, that so many different kinds of projects as well, you know, in terms of setting the look and choices, you know, what's changed and, you know, how you approach it.
Well, since Jeff just mentioned these close-ups, I mean, I'm in love with these. Obviously, the C series and on Ford versus Ferrari, we expanded them. Dan Sasaki, so expanded them so they fit the LF, and that was, you know, turned out very nice. I mean, they were kind of prototypes, and it was, you know, had some issues and some problems, but I mean, I agree with Jeff and the way Mangold and I shoot, and even with Alexander. I mean, the close-ups, you know, we try not to isolate the character in a close-up, and then going closer, physically closer with the camera on, let's say a 40 anamorphic, and still feeling the surrounding, and, you know, being able to compose and sense interaction or reactions of other people, but still have an intimate close-up, you know, is one of the beauties of, you know, that glass and the bigger formats. And I did the same thing on Trial of the Chicago 7. I mean, I knew I'd be static a lot in close-ups in court, but I didn't want to isolate them. I mean, already I got, you know, 15 people sitting in the same spot every day, and you know, really tried to tie them in and get the close-ups, but always, you know, be able to rake and feel the other people present. You know, Phenomenon, I think, was, now that you mention it, I think it was the first anamorphic show I'd done, and it was C's and E's, but the C's I really, you know, loved. I mean, consciously just C's. I think it was first time I'm Patch Adams in the $1 Million Hotel, and then I really, you know, try to, I mean, you get him. I mean, Nebraska, of course, and try to get him whenever I can. And, you know, now they've expanded. I just was talking to Jim Rotovich yesterday. I mean, they've expanded a large portion of their anamorphic, so we can use them on larger format cameras, and it's great. Yeah, but yeah, love that aspect ratio, and being able to create close-ups, and also, you know, just not use close-ups as often, but really like in Nebraska. I mean, you know, when you do go close up on Bruce Dern, it's really powerful and effective, because you're not just constantly using that, and then that really has an impact. So you know, yeah.
Yeah. What Jeff, I want to ask all of you this question. In terms of, it's kind of tied into setting the tone and setting your look. These days, if you're going to shoot digitally, how much do you collaborate DIT, if you have a DIT and a colorist before your movie, during the movie, and after the movie? I know some people rely heavily on a DIT and some people don't, and some people, you know, rely heavily on the colorist. I'm just intrigued to know, you know, what your process is.
Well, unless you're doing something out of the ordinary, or you're using a new camera system or some kind of something that you haven't experienced before, I don't necessarily talk to them prior to it. You know, I mean, you might find out where you're doing your color and talk about your approach and what your intentions are and what it's going to be. But that doesn't come into my process in setting tones and look. That's all through, it's all driven to me by the story, and then the conversations with the director, what he has and his vision, and then how I can contribute to that, and then what alters from that once we could kind of get into that conversation, and what best, again, supports that story. So they become crucial once you start shooting, obviously, and you have your DIT on set. You know, the funny thing is, and I don't know what you guys did on Mank, Erik, but traditionally with David, there was no DIT on set. You know, we had our 2 monitors, and we did the best that we could, and kept it fairly close. You know, like the rough cuts were not off, and if the things were needed something, the editors were very adept at kind of making nuances for us, so at least things flowed and we find out if we had any problems or not. And then we tend to always finish in the same place with the same colorist, and so that's a relationship and an understanding. And then you sit down and talk to them, and they start viewing it dailies, and you start deciding about what it wants to be and where it can go and how to get to certain levels or what you want to achieve. And so that's my process.
Yeah, we didn't have a DIT. We did build some LUTs before we started, and we built well, there are a couple ones, like there's a day for night sequence in the movie that I did a lot of testing for, and we built those LUTs with the colorist, and we did a lot of tests, so it was sort of like workflow tests, and it was testing the camera. I wasn't trying to figure out what ASA to rate it at and how much noise to deal with, and how much noise were we comfortable with, how far could we push the camera, because I knew I needed the camera as fast as possible. But I don't know. I mean, I've sort of done it. I guess I've done it both ways now. I just the movie I'm on now, we have kind of an aggressive look, and Dan built some lenses for me on this film. We're shooting spherical, but they're kind of aggressively tuned, and but I did it with the colorist. So we took the lenses and then we put a lot of spherical aberration in them, and then we went to the colorist and we stepped on it preemptively, because it lifts all the shadows, because I knew that I was going to be using a lot of backlight. So it was it's a kind of a look. Well, I hope we'll see. I don't know. I'll let you guys know if I'm successful. It's way outside my comfort zone, but so that Ian at Light Iron, Jeff, is helping with this one, and I shot some tests, and then I brought them to him, and then we built some LUTs based on the tests, and then I shot another set of tests with those LUTs, and then we tested and I'm not going to use a DIT on the movie, but I quite liked that process, actually, of kind of discovery, and with relation to the optics and the grade, and so it's sort of like testing a film stock, I guess, in a way. For this particular job, that seemed like an interesting way to go. I don't know. I mean, we'll see. It's kind of a new thing for me, but we're going to try it. So. But the lens thing is super interesting. I think what's happening in lenses now.
Can I go back? Of course, when you shoot tests, we take it and the DIT comes in. We figure out what LUTs we're going to use for the show, but that comes by a byproduct of what we've already decided and how to get there. So again, you're pushing something, you're trying something different. So it was necessary for you to go that route.
It totally, yeah. If it was, I was definitely outside of what I was comfortable doing before. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I work. I mean, we try and do a bit of live grading on set with the DIT, because, I mean, it depends on the director. But like with Mangold, he's very specific about the saturation and the contrast, and then it's very important that actually what we have decided the look of the movie is, and then it actually happens in the DIT tent, because I try not to isolate myself in it. So I actually set up a combo tent where I'm sitting with the director and my DIT, and so the chain of communication doesn't break down completely. But then of course I find him always looking at our monitors, and always, like, since he has Lonnie right there, just like talking to them. It's like, why, it can't, and then so we do a lot of tweaking. But I do find it kind of important, because then when we create our dailies, they really are supposed to be carbon copies of what we set on set, and then that's very important, because then of course the editor lives with it, and the director lives with it for months and months. We go and we check the monitors in the editing room, and Because what will happen, of course, if something is warm and, but it wasn't intended to be that warm and they live with it for 3 months and then you take it out of the DI and of course you go, it goes, that doesn't look the way, it looked all the time. It looks cool. And I'm like, yeah, because it was too warm, we didn't want it. Like, remember, we didn't want it warm. But then, it's too light and it happens to the best of us. I mean, so it's very important that, they live during the post period with a look that we desired and what the intent was on the set. And I mean, I remember talking to Janusz, and he would always get up at 5 in the morning and go to Technicolor and retime all the dailies. And I'm like, why do you do that? Like, it's just dailies. He goes, because Steven's going to see it and is going to for that exact reason, he's going to like the blue and then he's going to live with it, and then later I can't think, so he would go and retime all the dailies every morning before call, and then it seemed like excessive. But I mean, if people like Spielberg, who are very knowledgeable technically, and I mean, it's happened to me too. You just get used to something, after months of looking at it and previews, and then it really sort of can limit, getting back to what the initial intent was. So it's. I like messing with it on the set, and then we also pull irises, I pull a lot of irises, and it becomes a real little communication center. But I think it's important to keep the director involved and not, I really fear the idea of being my tent and the director in his tent, and so we're always either butted right up, we can take up the dividing wall, and it can be a bit distracting having this director there, but it's worth it. It's I think it's really bad if we end up being isolated and we don't hear everything he's saying. I mean, Alexander Payne, we don't have any. It's like, I mean, we don't even have a tent. I mean, it's exactly. Onboard monitor, and he's on the. And when we were doing film on Sideways and all that, I mean, he just would stand next to the camera, pull up an Apple box, sit next to the lens, and I tell a lot of directors that that's really the way to do it. They all like agree to it in theory, but then they just become so focused on this monitor, and they say, "Oh, I didn't miss that." I'm like, "Yeah, sit right here, then you can see it," and you can, and the whole trust we had with the operators back then. I mean, nobody was monitoring anything, and the director would look over to an operator after the take and give him a thumbs up, or he could go like, let's do another one. I mean, but you didn't have to scrutinize the composition on everything, and I mean, it's like, okay, it's a master, like you have to stare at it all over, like look at your actors, look at this, so. I mean, I think it's nice when, and with Alexander we have that. It's like a camera operator, which I typically operate on his movie. The focus puller, the boom guy, and the actors and the director, and that's like your little intimate triangle. It doesn't matter how big the movie is; that's where it happens, and that's all it takes. But I know, because Fincher invited me in one day, and he was actually talking about Reds and with Alexander, and we both were there, and he showed us, how he's moving the frame around, and he's like recomposing, and he goes, I eliminate all human error. I can like constantly like and this, and I roll over. I roll over. I don't lay track anymore. I roll over cables, and so he was, and how. Anyway, how he can control everything, and how he doesn't like carts, and he showed me these airplane carts, because I hate crew gear. I hate when they have crew jackets, and like I'm sure you've heard it all, but
yeah, lived it.
And Alexander and I, this down at we walk out back to our cars. He's talking to us for 2 hours, and this, I guess it was before Nebraska, and then Alexander didn't really say much, and then as we're walking back to our cars, he turns to me and goes, "But I like human error. I like when the operator overshoots something and has to tilt back up a little bit to correct, so very, very different, obviously every director, very, very, very different approach, and for us, different ways of working and adjusting, but that's the beauty of it too,
I think some of that gets,
like you were saying earlier, Jeff, some directors go, I literally had guys, I mean, I also worked with Gordon Verbinski, who's like Fincher, and they're friends.
Yeah.
So he's
Yeah,
very
they
similar.
are.
Like, I mean, he draws everything. So it's in the little
Yeah.
cocktail and, you know, Sonnenfeld and, you know, that's little, you know, and they're very similar. But, you know, I've had guys go, you do your thing, whatever you do with the lenses and the light. And I couldn't get them once to look through that, you know, just in the film days, look through an eyepiece. I couldn't look. I go, all right, whatever. And, you know, and with the blocking and, I mean, just recently I had one where it's literally just go, you know, read the pages, and then he turned to me and he's like, you're good, you got it. And I'm, yeah, and I call the script supervisor over, dictate the whole shot later. So, you know, but it's fun because you know, every film is different, and that's why it's nice to work with different directors, you know. But yeah.
Yeah.
Say something.
Yeah, I was. I was going to say two things. I mean, imagine back in the day talking about trust. I mean, first I was going to say the thing about the monitoring and digital world that we're all living in now is of course it's safer, and of course you have better rest at night. You don't have to worry if you can show up the next day, or don't call the lab at 4 a.m. to make sure there was an image, you know, that you can show your face. But there was something so magical about seeing something projected and the victory of it being more beautiful than you actually thought it was going to be. Now, of course, sometimes it may not have worked out, but I think for all of us sitting right here, it usually worked out pretty well. And there was always something that you didn't expect, you know, something that caught your eye that was like, that wasn't going to do that, but it did. And it's so beautiful. And I was going to add to that, like talking about the trust of the crew. My dad used to tell stories about, you know, like on Butch Cassidy and Sundance Kid, he operated for Conrad, but those were rack over cameras. It wasn't even reflex, right? You weren't, it's not that no one saw it. The operator didn't see it either. So imagine that, like, and as the parallax, like as someone came close to you, the finders were geared so that you would end up, if you were doing a close-up, if you split the actor's face down the middle, you knew you had him in the middle. If you cut off half his face. So there was a lot of blind trust there. That's why they didn't wrap sets for several days after that, because it wasn't until the screening room that anybody knew what you captured that day, let alone if it was soft, because no one was looking at the image. So anyways.
Yeah. Different craftsmanship. I mean, focus pulling, you know.
Focus pulling it.
I mean, going to dailies was always a big thing, especially I'm sure with Fincher and then with Gore, and he would, you know, scrutinize every, you know, I think it's like right behind it, like between, you know, I mean, it's the first ACs, and I mean, but it was really an experience. And then, like you said, I mean, things came out beautifully, and it was also hugely gratifying. And you know, watching dailies together as a group, and you really had this, you know, have a glass of wine and they'd order something, and you know, it's often on location. It was like somewhere nearby in the hotel or in a trailer, or you know, in town. You'd go to the screening room, and you know, it took time out. You know, after, I mean, it was long days, but it was really a special experience to watch it. You know, and then you know, had wardrobe and hair people would show up, and it's just felt like, okay, we're, you know, it really created that you know, experience of like looking at what you've made, and you know, watching it together, and you know, the nervousness and anxiety, but also the gratification that if it was beautiful, like it's an irreplaceable moment. Now we don't have it anymore. We log on to, what is it called, you know, and watch dailies. I don't even do it. I mean,
yeah. I look back on it now, and I don't know where the time came from. You know, you have a 6 o'clock call, you shoot for 12 hours, you drive somewhere across town to a screening room, you sit and watch an hour and a half of dailies, go to dinner. When do you sleep?
Yeah,
you know, I don't know how we did it. I'm tired now. We don't go to dailies or anything, but
we didn't sleep much, but it was sort of an extension, a social extension of the day. I mean, and you know, there was always, I mean, at least with Gore, you know, there was always some good wine there, and you know, and then it was yeah, it was a nice way to end the day. I mean,
it was,
yeah,
it was really a community. You know, you all felt like you were doing something together, a common goal and a common success, hopefully most of the time. But Yeah.
Because now you have to go back the next day and say to your crew, oh, I saw this some pics last night. I just kind of just scanned through it, but
Right.
I don't know, but this 50, let's check it out. It kind of looks a bit milky and stuff. But then you would sit there, and the first AC would be the A camera operator, B camera operator, and they'd all go, and you go, look at B cameras, like, and I mean, it's just great. It's like constantly a feedback on everything and experiencing it together. And like, I don't have to go now and explain to the first AC, I think, the 50 has, like, the edges are softer. I mean, and let's put it up and let's test it at lunch. I mean, we'd always like all experiences right away, or a filter we tried, or or a stock that was grainy, like we decided to push after stuff. I mean, all this stuff with the lab, talking to talking to the daily Mark Van Horn, I'm sure
Every morning,
every morning, and he would send these reports back. I mean, the craziest notes and things, but how he's also following the story and taking in the story in his own way without the sound, and I mean, and we'd read that. I mean, it was great. Yeah.
Laser pointers were big in Fincher's world. So
yeah,
you watch dailies, and every time you thought something was perfect, he showed you where all the things were that were not. So I got my own, and I would fight him with this.
As a lightsaber, a light laser.
Exactly.
It's interesting. Talking about that makes me think of something else I want to ask you guys. I'm also conscious of time. I don't want to take up too much more of your time, but those days when we used to sit and watch dailies in the theater, now you think about, because of COVID, there's been a decline. Some of the at least in the US, some of the major theater chains are closing down, and now they're talking about releasing movies in the theaters and on TV or streaming at the same time, and it's obviously going to go that way, that more and more of the things that we shoot are going to be experienced on the small screen rather than the big screen. And I just wonder, will that change anything in terms of how all of you might approach storytelling and filming something? Because when you're seeing something, that first of all, there's the shared experience of seeing something in a movie theater, which you can't really replace. But looking at something on a big screen, you will notice something a lot more, about the edges of the frame and the details that you might miss when you're looking at even on a 6-unit TV screen. I don't know. So I'm just wondering, should we start thinking about filming things in perhaps a different way, or have you already? So
I mean, I'll be shooting, as long as I'm going to be shooting. I'm going to be shooting for the big screen. At least in my head. I mean, we already joke about it, like, oh, nobody will see it on an iPhone, but my kids, I have 12-year-olds. I mean, they watch everything on an iPad. It's like I give them a choice. Do you want to go to the movie theater, this and that? And then, sometimes I force them to see something and longer format and really watch a movie like The Man Who Would Be King, and but it's they're not even used to it. They've never really, they've certainly never seen a film projection, but I mean, I'm not going to change my approach, and I do think, we talk about this all the time, about this thing, the pandemic and Warner Brothers and now Disney, and of course, during COVID, a lot of people upgraded their home entertainment. I had myself, I never watched a lot of Netflix and TV. I just didn't really find the time. But you buy a nice big OLED, you get a good. It's going to be tough to get people unused to that and get them back in the theater. But there's certainly films, and certainly the ones I want to work on that are just experienced differently, and the crowd psychology. Whether it's I remember watching Aliens in Westwood in a theater with 600 people, and the mass hysteria that it created. It was just like, you can't produce that, even no matter how great your little sound system is at home. And so I do hope it it doesn't get lost for generations, because we are all doing what we're doing because of our experiences going. When I was a kid and I went and saw Ben-Hur and Lawrence of Arabia, and it was a big deal and a big event, and there was an intermission, and I could go get ice cream, and I mean, you know, that's what made me love cinema, and it was just a, you know, something I would look forward to. About, you know, okay, new Kubrick movies like Barry Lyndon. I mean, I remember, like, I can't wait till, you know, to go to the theater and see it, and then, you know, and you know, I hope that doesn't get lost in, you know, the habits of change for society completely. I do feel, I'm hopeful that after, you know, we overcome this and we normalize our social uh, rules, that, you know, people will be longing to experience that again. In Greece, we were lucky. We have, in the summer, everything switches to open air theaters. You know, so that actually it went on, it carried through. But you know, I just hope that people are going to be longing to get back to that experience and not just forget about it. And yeah, anyway.
Go ahead.
Sorry, Jeff. Go ahead.
I think that the theatrical releases are the benchmark. That's what we've all grown up to do, and that's the integrity level that we want to bring to it. And I think that can't change. And if you start changing it, two things: you're not doing work, you're compromising your own work. But let's not forget, the audience keeps evolving each year. The more technology they have, the more they can stop frame, the more they store, the more you can go online and have 8,000 people write comments about your work on something. You need to keep raising the bar in order to satisfy that kind of, you know, however many years ago when people were afraid when a train was on the screen because they actually thought it was going to run into them. And now you can literally tell a story sideways and people follow it and will point out the flaws in it. And we'll freeze frame it and analyze it with 10 other people and match it to the shot before. So no, I think regardless of where projection or display ends up, you still got to bring your biggest, best game, or it's just not going to live up to our standards, which is partly why we get hired in the first place.
Yeah,
For sure. Looks like we lost Erik somehow.
Hold on, my camera died.
When did that?
that's because he's got the fancy
Sorry.
camera, so he looks.
Yeah, I know.
He does.
That's
He
what
looks
I did.
great.
Here we go.
Yeah,
Well, you know, it's funny. I think I was thinking back about the movies that I love, and I was asking myself, like, would I have been in a position to appreciate those movies if I had a pause button when I was 12 years old? And I don't think I would have. Like, I think, like, would I have had the patience to watch Close Encounters when I was 12 if I had a pause button? I don't think so, you know. And I think the captive audience aspect of the cinema, where you can tell an elaborate story that asks the audience to invest in it, is a real thing. Like, it's a really important thing. And if you just give everybody the opportunity that when their kids are screaming in the background or they have to go to the bathroom or whatever, they just hit pause and they get up, or they get distracted and they're looking at the phone and I'll finish it later. It's a different experience. And I think great movies may get lost in that a bit, you know, like,
well,
great
also
movies.
the way the stories are told now. I mean, you know, in Godfather, like how, you know, 40 minutes of this wedding in the beginning and setting up these characters. And I did watch Godfather with my son recently, and you know, but I know it works. Like, if we sat down, we didn't pause this, and we're not, you know, I mean, he's actually really into, but you know, it's like, we're not going to take a break. We're not going to do anything else while, you know, at the same time.
Right.
If you really need to pee, we'll pause it. But, you know, it's like, you know, and you know, just the way stories unfold though these days, it's such a different pace, and it takes time. You know, it took time to build these characters. A man who would be king also, I mean, it takes forever. But in the end, you know, it really applies even to this generation that is used to, like, 3-minute format. I mean, they watch things on the iPad that's typically the average length is probably 3 minutes. You know, that's like, that's the information capacity, that's how they take in a human. You know, but to have him, you know, watch Sean Connery and Michael Caine and, like, go through this whole arc of their journey, and then in the end it's very satisfying to me. He really loved the movie, and he really liked the Godfather movies, and he really gets a complexity of how every, like, Fredo, and what is his dynamic with, you know, Michael, and, you know, but in the movies that they typically see, I mean, it's not allowed for that. You know, I mean, I'm just talking about pacing and how stories are told these days. You know, what studio would let you cut a movie like Godfather now, you know, where it just goes on, you know, 25, 30, 40 minutes, like it's just introduction. But then you understand all the dynamics of all these characters, and then you can really do things with the story. But it's just, yeah, I mean, yeah, it's all very concerning.
Yeah, I mean, how many households do you think turn off all the lights and have no interference and no phones ringing and a perfectly calibrated monitor to watch these fantastic images?
Yeah.
For sure. Funny enough, we have a TV and it's not an OLED, and I'm trying to convince my wife to buy an OLED because we switch the lights off, and that's an argument itself. She wants the lights on, and I want the lights off. And we're watching a movie, and when it gets dark, you know, it's an LED's backlit TV, and there's some kind of circus dance where there's not rich blacks, and you can see the blacks moving as the scene's moving, and it's so annoying and so distracting.
You got to get a different TV. I can't even watch things in hotel rooms. I watch films that were shot on film, and I know they look good, and I look at it and go, oh my God, and this is like how the whole world is watching this movie.
Exactly.
I mean, it's really.
Go get your wife, and we'll talk to her about it.
Yeah, I mean,
I would too.
I mean, the OLEDs are cheap now. Three OLEDs in Greece in every country house I have where now it's like the 55-inch OLED. I mean, it's €1,000. So
it's really come down in price.
Yeah, I mean, you should definitely, Matthew, you should definitely upgrade. I mean, I'm still holding on to my plasma. I have this Pioneer Elite plasma. I'm actually watching right now.
Me too.
Mank on it. It's the screener came today, and I'm checking the blacks and all that. But this thing is beautiful. I know it's gonna die at some point, but at least now I can get an OLED, you know. But I mean, I was holding on to this thing. I've got it for dailies like 8 years ago, you know. So
they weigh 800 pounds. Those plasmas, they're so heavy.
Yeah, but this one is great. The Kuros Pioneer Elite, you know, I mean, it still looks just incredible, you know. But anyway, but that's a problem. Like if things start looking so good at home, you know.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, it changes. You know, how people aren't, you know, experiencing the way we would want them to experience things. At least when in the movie theater, the cinema, we got a fighting chance of it. You know, of our vision kind of holding true.
Well, the group
it's weird. Like I haven't
we
seen
won't lower
Mank in
our
the theater.
standards. We're gonna not lower our standards for home viewing.
What were you saying, Erik?
I said I haven't seen Mank in the theater. We did the DI remote, and so the movie's premiered in theaters, but I haven't seen it. Neither has David. So
that's unbelievable.
Have they done a film print?
You know, that's a really good question. I don't know. That's a great question.
I'm curious because I know I did everything remote with the Streambox on Trial of Chicago 7 was a nightmare. But I know that they've made prints, and I mean, I really saw it for the first time, like it's the final product when it aired on Netflix, and then, but I know that the editor and they made a couple of film prints. I don't know if you're gonna show them.
Oh, cool. Yeah, I need to find out. I should find out.
I mean, it's so different when it gets printed to film. I wonder if you guys will get a chance to have a hand on that.
Go time it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Right. I would love to.
Yeah. It'll be nice because you'll pick up. Did you add grain to it in the DI?
We did. Yeah, we did. Actually, if you'll notice, there's moments where we did. If anywhere there's a dissolve or an optical, like a title or something, we added additional grain as if it had gone through the optical printer.
Yeah.
So you see it like from the point of the cut forward through the transition. There's extra grain, and there's a little more gate weave, and you know, it's kind of.
Oh, you put some.
Like kind of winking at people that.
Did you put changeover reel markings?
Yeah, cigarette burns.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, they're in there. Yeah.
Did I hear it or did I read? Did he add like a very low projector noise hum to something?
I think they did.
He did.
Well, you know, it's mono. The whole movie is mono sound. There's no stereo.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There was
Yeah.
there was a funny moment in the movie, not a moment where he goes, "Are you familiar with the parable of the organ monkey, like the organ grinder's monkey?" And then all of a sudden the lighting kind of changes as a big dim down.
Yeah. Yeah, we did a bunch of that. Yeah.
That was fun because
That's from Citizen Kane. Orson Welles did that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Somebody told me it's because he didn't. The excuse was that he came from the theater and he didn't know anything about an optical dissolve. And I did some research, and that's bullshit. He totally knew what an optical dissolve was. He was just choosing to make a statement. So.
Yeah.
Cool. I mean, I can keep on talking, guys. I don't know, but I'm like I said, I'm conscious of your time. You guys tell me if you have to go, or I can keep asking questions.
I got a house full of people, as you heard.
Yeah.
I mean, it's 2 hours. I think that's.
You did 2 hours? Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, listen, thanks so much for sharing your time with us today. I mean, it's so valuable. I know people are going to get so much value out of it, and I know how busy your schedules are, and just how tough it was to make this happen. So I just want to give a quick shout out to the rest of the Film Roundtable team: Erin Wild, Doug Torres, and Maria Prieto. And thank you everyone for listening and for your support for this platform and spending the time listening to these artists discuss their crafts and their views. And please follow us on Instagram at Film Roundtable, subscribe to our podcast, and like and subscribe on YouTube channel, and get updates on upcoming talks. And we'll see you all soon. And thanks again, everyone. Stay safe and healthy, and keep making great work that we all love to go and see.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Matt.
Thank you.
Thank you, Matt.
Great to see you guys.
Good to see you guys.
Good
Excellent.
luck again.
And, beautiful, Erik. Beautiful master job.
Wonderful.
Oh, thank you.
Well done. Yeah, good luck with the Oscars.
All right. Cheers.
Cheers. Bye.